Szanowni Państwo, pragnę
Ladies
powitać
and
na
gentlemen,
dzisiejszych obchodach
let me extend words of welcome
innych
to the
obozów
former Auschwitz inmates and other
ocalałych z zagłady.
camps and other
Witam
Holocaust
premier
survivors.
Rzeczypospolitej
Let me
Polskiej,
welcome
panią Beatę
Prime
Szydło.
Minister of the Republic of Poland, Ms. Beata Szydło.
Witam przedstawiciela Kancelarii
The representative of the Chancellery of the President of the
pana
Republic of
ministra
Poland,
Wojciecha Kolarskiego.
Mr. Wojciech Korski.
Witam przedstawiciela państwa
The
Izrael,
representative
panią
of the State of Israel,
Annę Azari.
Madam Ambassador Anna Azari.
Witam przedstawiciela Federacji
The representative of the
pana
Russian
ambasadora
Federation, Mr.
Siergieja
Ambassador
Andriejewa.
Sergei Andreev.
Witam wszystkich ambasadorów i
Let me welcome
przedstawicieli
all of the ambassadors
dyplomatycznego.
and the representatives of
Witam
the diplomatic
przedstawicieli
corps,
kościołów i wspólnot
representatives of churches and religious communities, including
i gmin żydowskich,
the representatives of the Jewish communities and
społeczności romskiej.
the representatives of the Roma
Witam
community,
przedstawicieli władz
the
regionalnych,
representatives
samorządowych.
of the regional
Witam
authorities,
reprezentantów wszystkich
and all
organizacji,
the representatives of various institutions and organizations,
osoby
as well
przybywające
as
na obchody.
those who have come here to participate in this commemoration.
O zabranie głosu proszę
And now,
premier
I will
Rzeczypospolitej
ask the Prime Minister of the Republic of Poland to take the floor, Ms. Beata Szydło.
Ekscelencje,
Your Excellencies,
Panie, Panowie,
ladies and gentlemen,
rządowcy, Szanowni Państwo,
representatives of the local authorities, ladies and gentlemen.
ale przede wszystkim
First and foremost,
Państwo, ci,
I
którzy
would like to address
jesteście
those
świadectwem dla nas wszystkich,
who are a
świadectwem
testimony
Auschwitz,
to what happened in Auschwitz and in what happened
ocaleni
in Birkenau, survivors, inmates,
przez ten czas, który
all those
nie potrafimy
who survived a time that all of us
nazwać.
cannot really understand and we cannot even give it a proper name.
2 lat,
Since 72
ten dzień
years ago, this very day, the 27th of January,
wyjątkowy.
is a special day.
Jesteśmy w miejscu, które trudno jest
This place
je
we're in is a place that's very difficult to define, and it has various names.
określają to, co się tutaj wydarzyło.
Some people describe what happened here as a great tragedy. Golgotha, they call it,
fabryce śmierci.
Others call it a factory of death.
Żadne z tych słów
But none of these words can really render the meaning of what happened here.
tego zła, które tutaj się wydarzyło,
The evil that happened here cannot be properly rendered by any word.
odebrał
Here, humanity was taken away from other people.
wszystko.
Lives were taken, but not only lives, everything that defines us as people was taken away.
Święcim.
I was born in Oświęcim.
Od dziecka słyszałam
Since I was really little, I could hear those stories of Auschwitz and Birkenau.
szkoły, przychodzili, ocaleli,
Survivors went to the school that I attended. They came there and they told stories. We were little children at that time.
te historie straszne.
Those stories seemed awful, but we could not really comprehend them.
Znam opowieści mojej babci.
I'm familiar with stories of my grandmother.
Próbowała
When she was still young, together with her friends, she tried to help people here. She tried to give them some food because they knew where the inmates would work and they left some food there. So I know the stories of my grandparents. They worked in Berszynowice and they would leave loaves of bread
że przyjdą więźniowie.
because they knew that inmates would go there and work there and possibly they could come across this loaf of bread.
O dymach, które unosiły się.
I know stories of smoke that was rising from the crematoria above Brzezinka, but Birkenau.
Wspominają do dzisiaj.
Till this very day, people who can remember that,
Do dzisiaj
they say that they can still remember this
dym roznosił.
special kind of smell.
Jestem stąd.
I'm from here.
Niedaleko stąd są Harmenże.
Not far from here is Harmenge.
Moja mama.
My mother was born there.
Był jej rodzinny dom.
There was her family home there.
Dnia do tego domu,
And one day,
domu innych sąsiadów przyszli
people came to that home. They were soldiers
w niemieckich mundurach.
and they wore German uniforms. Harmenge,
Domy
well, all the people there were
tam pod...
resettled. The town was
Mówię o tym,
basically ruined and
że
a camp
będąc
was
tutaj,
built there. Why am I saying that?
mieszkając niedaleko Auschwitz,
I used to live not far from here.
i ci wszyscy, którzy tu przyjeżdżają,
People who come here,
sobie odpowiedzieć na pytanie.
people who live here nearby, we try to answer the following question.
Próbujemy sobie odpowiedzieć na pytanie, co takiego musiało się wydarzyć, aby człowiek
What was it that happened
takie zło.
so that humans could do such terrible things to other humans?
Nie potrafi znaleźć odpowiedzi na to pytanie.
None of us can find an answer to that question, though.
Nas nie potrafi zrozumieć tego cierpienia,
None of us can understand that suffering
wy przeszliście.
that you went through.
Ale najważniejszym cierpieniem,
The most important form of
zalałym,
suffering that all the survivors
pamięć o
need to go through,
tych, którzy nie przeżyli,
is the memory of those who didn't make it, who died. This memory of this massacre that took place here. This destruction of humanity. It's a sense of sadness, of fear,
żyć, nadziei.
and this ocean of lost lives and hopes. This is a thorn. It's an open wound.
Nigdy
It may close sometimes,
zabliźniona nie będzie.
but it shall never be fully healed, and it must not be forgotten.
I to jest najważniejsze przesłanie,
And this is the most important message ahead of us, the truth and memory.
z tego miejsca.
Today, from this place of destruction and death, the destruction of everything that is human, from this place I want
To
this voice to be heard.
w niemieckim obozie
What happened in this German concentration camp, in the extermination camp, was evil. This evil was cruel, malicious, and cunning and unimaginable.
Można pokonać tylko dobrem.
And it is the kind of evil that can be overcome only with good.
To jest,
The memory
to jest broń
and
złu.
truth, this is the weapon that we can wield to combat evil. This is the truth that needs to be spelled out, so that this truth can never be turned into a lie. A lie that might be used as an alibi for evil.
Harmenże, Pławy.
Oświęcim, Auschwitz, Brzezinka, Birkenau, Pławy,
Polskie miasta i wsie.
Oświęcim and Brzezinka, Harwerze, these were Polish towns and villages. Poles used to live here. Polish families had lived here, and they were
Tutaj
expelled from their own homes.
miejsce tych polskich domów powstało.
In their place, a German extermination camp was
Której
built. And this is the kind of truth that needs to be told, because you must not be afraid of truth.
I że co roku
We are here together every year on the 27th
szkolenia KL Auschwitz
of January at this commemoration of the liberation of the KL Auschwitz. And here, Poles and Jews and Germans and Roma and Hungarians and the French meet here, and all the other nations.
jest świadectwo tego.
And this is
Chcemy
a testimony to the fact that we want to learn from what happened here. We want to
wiemy doskonale
say the truth.
dzięki temu
And we know full well that only thanks to that can we avoid evil.
przesłaniem dla nas i dla kolejnych
The greatest message for us and for the next generations that are going to meet here
tego 27
every year on the 27th of January is
prawdą
the following thing.
zło zwyciężamy.
They need to combat evil with the truth and goodness. This is
Którzy
an obligation that rests with us. And we owe it to those who lost their lives here. And also we owe it to those who survived.
życiem mówili i krzyczeli
We
bardzo
owe it to those who used their lives to speak the truth. And they used to say, do not forget, so that the world can be a better place. But first and foremost,
kolejnego
so that the world can avoid
zła.
such an unimaginable evil to happen again. Because this is something, this kind of evil, we cannot truly comprehend, neither can we truly give it a proper name.
Które staramy się zdefiniować.
It's the kind of evil that we're trying to define, and we try to answer the following question: why?
Musimy definiować zgodnie z prawdą,
And we
która
must define it using the truth that defines
tym
it.
złem byli ludzie.
The evil that I'm talking about were people.
Odebrać człowieczeństwo.
People who wanted to take humanity away from other people.
Byli ludzie,
It was perpetrated by people in German uniforms.
niemieccy naziści,
German Nazis,
którzy są odpowiedzialni za zło,
who are
które
responsible
miało miejsce
for the
w
evil
niemieckim obozie
that happened in a
Auschwitz,
German extermination camp,
które zostały
Auschwitz-Birkenau, and in other
uruchomione po
machines of death that were opened so that other people could be exterminated.
Nie ma innej prawdy.
There is no other truth.
Ogromne
What
brzemię.
is out there is a drama, it's a tragedy, and it's a huge burden, but we need to
Dzisiaj razem jesteśmy, jest właśnie ogromnym
keep
darem.
speaking out this truth, and that truth is a great gift.
To zło ujawnione i
The
nawet
Holocaust is an evil that was laid bare, that's tangible. Millions of people died. Millions of hopes, identities, and dreams were lost here.
wyobrażenia ani do pojęcia.
Neither can we
Nie można tego
understand nor comprehend it, because you
Chcemy
can't.
nadać temu jakieś ramy,
And yes, we try to fit it inside
bo my
some
jesteśmy
kind of a framework, but we cannot really do that because we are just people. And people who made it happen were people who hated other people.
nie mówmy o nich.
But let us not speak of them. Let us remember the heroes and people who died.
Kurtynę potępienia.
And let us simply forget them and condemn them.
Prośmy Boga,
We today, we need to address God so that it never happens again.
Niemieckie obozy zagłady to było
The German extermination camps were factories of death and evil. All too late. Well, ultimately, this evil was
spokój duszy
overcome by what is good. So may those people rest here. We need to remember their memory.
zawsze pokoju.
Good shall always overcome evil.
O zabranie głosu proszę
May I now
Batshevę
ask
Dagan,
Batsheva Dagan, who is the Holocaust survivor and the former inmate of Auschwitz, to take the floor.
Wszystko będzie w porządku. Dziękuję. Czy słyszeć, którym mam mówić, tym czy tamtym? Tutaj. Witam Was
Welcome.
serdecznym szalom.
I'd like to bring you warm shalom from Israel. Warm welcome to all of you gathered here who wanted to be here with us.
Jestem
Welcome.
w Zaunie.
I'm here in Zauna. This is the place where people
Więźniarza.
were turned into inmates, prisoners.
Młoda dziewczyna.
How did it happen to me? I was a young girl there, long hair.
Cieli mi włosy
So they cut my hair first. They put this tattoo on my arm,
na moim lewym przedramieniu.
my left arm.
A nie było, ja widzę tyle pasiaków tutaj.
And I can see so many stripped uniforms back then. We didn't have enough of those clothes. So I got a Red Army uniform to wear,
Spodnie
namely the trousers and a top
lewe,
and two left shoes. Wooden shoes, actually.
dałam, a na głowie
So you can imagine what I looked like. They shaved my head and I was wearing a rug on my head. That was me.
A jak się widziałam, jak się mogłam poznać?
Was I able to recognize myself in the mirror? There were no mirrors. I was looking at myself at the glass and I could only see
Osobowo.
the silhouette of whom I've become.
Jak można tutaj żyć?
How can you live here?
A gdzie rodzina?
Where's your family?
Mama, ojciec?
Where's my mum? Where's my father? Where's my sisters and brothers? I was there on my own, completely on my own.
Walczyć z...
How was I to fight the new reality?
Nie wiem, czy państwo wszyscy wiedzą.
I don't know whether you all aware, but the Germans shot down the Jewish schools and the Jews were not allowed to study. I left to study. I wanted so much to go to school.
A tutaj byłam
And here,
ludźmi z całej Europy.
all of a sudden, I found myself with all the people across Europe. I heard so many languages. So I felt maybe I learned something. I did learn
Przede wszystkim
a
przeklinać.
lot. The first thing I learned was to curse, and a bad language is all the languages, because that's what I heard.
Później
Bad
wybrałam,
languages.
ale o tym nie będę mówiła. Tylko
And then, indeed, I learned other languages as well, but I'm going to speak about something else. So I wanted to study. And there were these female inmates
wiersz,
who wrote poetry, who wrote poems.
prawą.
And these poems were my food for thought, were my mental feed. And there was this former inmate, Krystyna Żygórska. She wrote this poem.
Ja oczywiście, to jest ogromny wiersz.
It's a big poem. I will only quote
Malutką
a few lines.
I przyjdzie dzień,
And so the dame will come when for your march we will charge at you without command, butcher you heartlessly, beat you no end. Music will also play for you. You'll howl, you've had enough. But from spite will not stop. But from spite will not stop. For so many victims, so much blood, you will all pay, only you. For so much sorrow, sighing tears, may you all die like dogs. And so that the world may breathe a sign of relief, we will rub out every trace of you. Only then will we sing aloud to the beat of freedom, left, left.
Zemsty była potem.
This need of retaliation was huge, but how can we get back on these people? So we were looking for retaliation. Now, if you shot in death, that's easy. Poison? Not difficult at all. So what would be the right death? Ask the former inmates. What kind of death did we want for our perpetrators? Well, we wanted them to pass through the same Via Dolorosa as we did. That was the only type of punishment that we wanted them, as we thought this would serve them right for all the evil they have caused us.
Wiecie, że była tutaj latryna.
You know, there was this latrine here. Everybody who visits Auschwitz can see the standalone toilet. Now, this latrine was our parliament, if you like, because it's where you could discuss things openly. Because the capos would not enter there because they felt disgusted. And so this latrine, this outside toilet, was our parliament, and we were talking there. What would it look like? Will the world believe us? And we thought, no, the world would never believe us. It's impossible for human beings to do so horror things to other people.
I właśnie myśmy myśleli, że będą to
So we thought
definiować jako
that one day
bujną
they would
wyobraźnię.
simply say, well, it was all mental disillusions or mental illusions or some fantasy coming from those Jews.
Myśli przechodzą.
So they would not treat it as real accounts.
Numer na ręku, więc
I had that number on my arm, so I will be over with Auschwitz. So
Auschwitz
we never called it Auschwitz. We called it Oświęcim by the name of the town.
było.
It was only later
Ja wiedziałam, że
that Auschwitz became
jak już tutaj byłam,
Oświęcim.
jadę. Ale
Only then did I find out
że to miejsce
that this is a place called Oświęcim, because, well, I never knew where they were bringing me.
teraz żyje
But I've survived.
i dożyję
I'm still here, and I've lived to see
52 lata.
all of you. And I'm here 72 years after the liberation.
Wielkie uczucie szczęścia.
It simply feels great. I'm filled with happiness because life is the greatest gift we can have.
Więc po wyzwoleniu byłam w Belgii,
So after the liberation, I went to Belgium,
do Palestyny
then to Palestine,
i byłam na początku mojej kariery
and at the beginning of my professional career, I worked at the nursery school.
w Izraelu.
And in Israel, summer is long,
Te rękawy się
so you can wear short sleeves, and this number of my arm was always out there.
do mnie dzieci pytały.
So kids would ask me, why have you got anything on your head? Who wrote it to you?
Przecież na papierze.
You should use paper to write on, not your body. And then I had to reply, and I had to tell them all about the concentration camp. I had to explain it, and I had to use simple language to explain it to the kids. But okay, enough about that.
I trzeba dzieciom coś powiedzieć.
And so
I pierwszą
you have to
książką była książka
somehow account it to the children. That's why I wrote this book. And my first book was called
Co wydarzyło się w czasie zagłady.
What Happened During the Holocaust, a rhyming story for kids
Chcą wiedzieć.
if they want to find out. So the very title
Dziecko mogło sobie wybrać.
suggests that you want to know or not. So it was up for a child to decide. I didn't want to impose anything on those kids. I didn't want to make them read it. And then the second book came. It was called Chica, a Dog in a Ghetto.
Czyka piesek w dziecię.
Chica, a Dog in a Ghetto, is a short story Mind you, in 1995, I came to visit a primary school here in Oświęcim, and I spoke to young kids, grade 1 to 3. The book was not yet out, so I was telling them the story about the dog. And the kids understood everything. We are afraid that the children would not understand, but of course the children are able to take it in at the very level of their then emotional development. So my books have been translated to 5 languages. I wish they were translated to more languages though. And this year, in April, last year, in April, a film was out entitled Chica, a Dog in a Ghetto. So the Germans made the premiere of the film in Hamburg, and I must say that I appreciate the way the Germans handled that. I mean, they showed a lot of understanding about treating my short story. So Chica is a Spanish word which means little. So Chica became famous all across the world and even won awards. 2 awards in Chicago. I was asking young people, because I was traveling there with young people, who's that film for? And they told me, it's for everybody to see. And so I think you can learn a lot from watching a film that was initially made for children. And then the third book that I wrote was What If the Stars Could Speak? This is a short story about the cousin. I'm the one telling the story of a cousin who was a mother of 2 children. And until the liberation in 1945, until the very date of liberation, that is the 27th of January, she was here in Auschwitz and she got liberated. And then I wrote another book in English, actually. It's in English, both in English and in Hebrew. And it's entitled Siren, or Mermaid was crying today, because in Israel the sirens are out loud to commemorate big events. Now, I'd like to say a few words about upbringing of children, because this dream of mine that I wanted to study did finally come true. I'm a psychologist by training, and I'm a lecturer at the Teachers College. And I just wanted to say a few words about this upbringing. But as it is mostly adults that I say, may I say that I have another book out for the adults, which was published by the museum, and it's called Blessed Be Imagination, Cursed Be Imagination. And it's basically about the accounts of the people who've been here. People call it a diary or a log of a survival. And now, in this book, I speak about each nation, I speak about each, and I use the language of all the nations represented here, and I try to tell the everyday story. I talk about everyday issues, physiological needs, how they were handled here. And because I managed to learn to write poems, I said to myself, I can't be gone before I present these poems to the world. That's why the book. And now let me go back to teaching. I've got this very basic question. Is it possible, is it necessary to teach children about the Holocaust? Shall we teach the Holocaust to children? Is it at all possible to teach that? You may indeed guess what my answer is.
Czy jest konieczne, czy jest możliwe?
So is it possible to teach the Holocaust? There's loads of questions. When shall we start telling children about the Holocaust? Shall we ask until the kid asks us a question? Well, we can ask and it never comes.
Więc trzeba
And so
dziecko stymulować.
you have to stimulate the children.
Te książki
So my books, or this film, Chico, a Dog in a Ghetto,
też pisali, nie tylko ja.
can be used. Not only my writings, of course, because other people wrote things about that as well. So what is it that we need to do with our children?
Zbadać, co dzieci wiedzą.
First of all, we have to find out how much they know. And children have taught me a lot.
Więcej niż my
It turned out that they know more than we would ever expect.
My dorośli
What we do,
rzucamy na
we somehow
nasze myśli.
transfer our feelings and our thoughts on small children, and they have completely different mindset. Say by the end of 10, they have a different mindset here.
Co dzieci wiedzą.
So we have to find out what they know, what are the sources of their knowledge, what is it that they would like to know,
Zapytać
and we need to ask
ty nauczyciel,
the teachers
ojcze czy matko, czy
or parents for that matter, are you able to provide them answers?
ja nie mogę.
And of course people can say, well, I can't give the answers because I don't know. I would have to do some research first.
A jak się przygotować?
How do you get prepared to discussing the Holocaust? There's loads of books and films
Programów w
and
internecie.
programs and the internet. For sure you can get prepared.
Właściwie obawiamy.
What is it that we are afraid of when discussing the Holocaust with children?
Równowagę.
We feel that maybe we will not be able to strike the right balance
Że
with the children's development, that maybe they will get afraid, that we will impact their sleeping patterns. Maybe we'll keep them awake at night.
Więc oczywiście, że można zrozumieć,
And so suddenly
są takie straty.
we can understand that these fears are there.
Jakie tematy są
And so
odpowiednie dla dzieci?
what are the topics that we should discuss with our children? Well, how do we help other people? How do we help people who have been imprisoned here? What happens when we miss our
Zabawką,
parents, our pets, our toys? So this feeling of loneliness.
podzielić się z
I would also like to
najmniejszych przeżyć, które
share
miałam więcej niż jedno.
one experience that I've had. I want to share it with you. It was one of the most wonderful experiences. On my birthday,
Od
I was given a poem.
z Sosnowca.
It was a poem written by an inmate who came from Sosnowiec. She was working in the Jewish commune.
Bardzo zdolna.
She was a very skillful
Podarowała
and talented poem, and she simply offered it to me.
się nazywałam Iza.
My Polish name was Iza, so she wrote a poem to little Iza.
Szampana.
And she said, I wanted to give you rivers of champagne, sausages and cakes,
Jedna.
but I am poor,
W bułkę
and therefore
zaklełam ambrozję.
I'm offering you ambrosia in a back roll. And this little loaf of bread into this little funny and childlike poem. This is what I offer you to lead your way. I put everything in here, all my best wishes coming from the bottom of my heart. I want to remember you with your round face,
Wiary.
with your childlike eyes full of
Taką widziałam.
faith. This is what I saw you when you first arrived. And this rain that was falling on you
Tej chudej
was whispering to me,
Stop, Zosieńko.
stop,
Spotkałam.
Zofia, I've just met a human being.
I niechaj blok
And so
rozgryzą.
let the insects go away from those blocks and maybe the thunder will destroy the buildings. I want to thank you, little Isa, for being exactly who you are.
Jeden z najpiękniejszych.
So this is one of the most beautiful birthday gifts I've ever received. Although I did receive other very moving and symbolic gifts. And so,
na moje życie.
did Auschwitz impact my life? Yes, it did.
Na wybór zawodu.
It influenced the way I decided to follow my life. It influenced my profession because I believe that it's all about upbringing. How do you make sure that you educate your children to be able to tell the good from the evil?
Na tym zakończę.
And I guess this is my conclusion. Thank you very much for your kind attention. Thank you.
Bardzo proszę ze mną.
Tak, teraz chwileczkę tylko tak, żebym nie upadła znów.
O zabranie głosu
May
proszę
I
pana
now
Bogdana
ask Bogdan
byłego
Bartnikowski,
więźnia
the
Auschwitz.
former inmate of Auschwitz, to take the floor.
Ja jestem numer 192,
I am number
31.
192731.
Obok numeru czerwony winkiel.
Apart from my number, there is this red P letter.
Wszystko to razem oznacza,
All this together means
że banditen aus Warszał.
I'm a Polish bandite aus Warschau. I'm 12 years old,
Polskim
and
bandytem.
I'm a Polish bandit from Warsaw.
2 dni wcześniej,
2 days before that,
zanim dostałem ten numer,
before I got this number,
rodziców,
I had parents, I had a home.
żyłem jak w trudnych
I
warunkach,
was living in the difficult conditions of the German occupation,
w miarę spokojnie.
but I was leading a stable life.
Dni temu.
But it only happened 2 days ago, and today I'm 12,
I od 2 dni
and for the last 2 days
Birkenau.
I've been in Birkenau.
O tym korytarzem długim.
I've taken this long corridor to get here.
W tłumie
I'm stumbling my feet in a crowd of naked, sweaty women who have arrived here with me from Warsaw districts of Wola and Ochota. We were traveling by night on the 11th and 12th of August 1944,
I ja jestem w tym tłumie.
and I'm one in this crowd. Next to us,
Na chodniczku,
on the little pavement
żadna z nas, żadna z kobiet ani z dzieci nie może stanąć.
that we're not allowed to stop, there is a couple of SS soldiers. They're laughing, they're talking. Sometimes they would point out to one
Śledzoną kobietę,
particularly disabled woman, because we had people who were elderly. There were old people, but also cripples among us.
czasami bawił. A
The
ja
SS soldiers were taking a laugh, while I'm scared.
jej matki,
I'm frightened. I'm naked. There is my mother, also naked, next to me, and we're walking through this crowd.
tragiczny
This was the very first and tragic picture that I had when I first arrived to this building. And then,
2 czy 3 dni razem z
2
dziewczyną.
or 3 days, I was with young girls. Here are those young girls, see? These girls wearing blue scarves are my friends, my colleagues.
Najwyżej 13, 14.
They were 13, 14 at that time.
Zupełnie malutkie.
And some of them were very little, 2 or 3 years old.
Więźniowie polityczni.
And these were political prisoners, you know, these political bandits of Warsaw, just like myself.
Męski,
And then I was transferred to a male
drewniane,
camp, 3-floor bunk beds.
oczonych na tych pryczach.
We had to share them with a couple of other inmates using the same blanket.
Bardziej dokuczliwy głód,
And then hunger
chłód,
and cold.
spoglądanie codziennie na dymiące kominy,
Every day we would watch the smoking chimneys of stacks,
zagazowanie,
where we knew what they were doing. This is where gasified people are burned. And maybe our fate
iść
is to go there and to end our life in the gas chamber.
z pierwszego dnia
On the
powstania
very first day
obiecał Hitler.
of Warsaw Uprising. This is what we heard from Hitler. This is a promise. You will all be shot death and the town will be destroyed completely.
5 miesięcy
And so 5 months
codziennej
of
wędrówki,
daily torture,
strachu,
of fear,
każdy dzień, każda noc nie
whether
powtarza się.
it is not really the last day or not really our last night.
Przychodzi szczęśliwy dzień.
And then there comes this happy day. Can you imagine a happy day in Auschwitz?
Wychodzę
I get out
czy
of Auschwitz and I'm holding my mother's hand.
nie przez komin, przez bramę
And I'm marching out of the gate
wiary.
rather than through the chimney.
Można wyjść.
It was unbelievable that you can actually leave here and that you can leave and live your life. And you can actually leave Birkenau to lead your life. And the life went on.
Plakietkę
I was offered this badge
gość honorowy.
where it says the honorary guest. Oh, no, I'm not an honorary guest.
Zawsze
I always feel
byłem więźniem.
a former inmate or an inmate indeed here.
Jak idę tym korytarzem,
Because when I walk back this corridor,
teraz wchodzili,
just as we entered here,
ja idę dalej goły.
I still walk naked, just as I did back then, because that's still in me. And not just in me, because when I talk to my friends, to my colleagues, to the further inmates of Birkenau, we are all somehow stigmatized, and we will be stigmatized until our death. We will never shake that off. I'm not an honorary guest. I keep coming here. I have to come here.
Dawać świadectwo
Because I have to give evidence, I have to bear testimony to the truth. I have to speak out about this tragic history. I have to account for what happened here, not just myself, we all coming.
bardzo trudne.
These are very difficult moments for us when we arrive here. You don't get sleep afterwards, and after the talks
Ale
you simply find it difficult to get calm.
moje przyjazdy jako
But when I come here, I feel it's something I have to do. It is my obligation, it's my duty, because I have to address young people and I have to make them understand what terror can bring, what hatred can result in.
dziękuję bardzo.
Thank you very much.
O zabranie głosu proszę pana ministra
ask
Wojciecha Kolarskiego,
Mr. Wojciech Kolarski,
sekretarza stanu w Kancelarii
and Undersecretary
Prezydenta
of State at the Chancellery of the
Rzeczypospolitej
President of the Republic of Poland, to take the floor.
czcigodni ocaleni,
Venerable survivors, Madam Prime Minister,
ekscelencje wszyscy,
Your Excellencies, all distinguished
panie i
guests,
panowie.
ladies and gentlemen.
Mam zaszczyt
It is
reprezentować prezydenta
my
Rzeczypospolitej
honor to represent here this meeting
podczas tej
President Andrzej Duda.
uroczystości
And this is a special event.
upamiętniającej
This event
Dzień Wyzwolenia
commemorates the day of the liberation of the Auschwitz Nazi German concentration and extermination camp.
Pochylam dzisiaj czoło,
I bow
składając hołd wszystkim ofiarom Holokaustu.
my head, I
Największej
bow before and pay tribute to all the victims of Holocaust, the worst crime in the history of humanity.
w obozie Auschwitz-Birkenau
Here, in Auschwitz-Birkenau,
mordowali masowo
in this
Żydów z
camp,
Polski,
Germans murdered en masse Jews from Poland
okupowanej Europy,
and
a także
other European
Polaków,
countries under occupation, and also they murdered Poles and Russians and the Roma.
Trzecia Rzesza
The
Niemiecka
Third German
zorganizowała
Reich
i przeprowadziła
organized and conducted a planned mass extermination on an industrial scale. It was the only such case in human history. In these factories of death that the Nazis had brought into our land, millions of people were exterminated, and it was a German goal to completely exterminate the Jewish people and to enslave and ruthlessly exploit the Slavic nations.
okrucieństwo i zbrodnie
The
hitlerstwa
Nazi cruelty and the crimes are unimaginable. Faced with death and suffering of millions of people,
przerażeni ogromem
we are struck with this enormousness of evil, and yet we must not look away.
w tym miejscu.
When standing here,
Trzeba zdobyć się na odwagę
we must be brave enough
z największą uwagą.
to look very closely. We must be brave enough to learn the truth and to pass it on to the rest of humanity.
Bo prawda o zagładzie
Because this truth, the truth about the Holocaust, the truth about Auschwitz, is
nie mogło się.
needed so that nothing like that ever happens again.
Polacy od samego początku byli
Since the very
ofiarami i
beginning, the
świadkami
Polish
tego, co
people
tutaj się
have been
działo.
the victims and witnesses of what happened here.
Pod brutalną okupacją
Despite the fact that our country was under brutal Nazi occupation at the time, the Polish underground state did its utmost to learn about the terrible German intentions and to stop their implementation.
Witold Pilecki
Witold
dobrowolnie dał się
Pilecki, a Polish
postawić
officer, agreed out of his own free will to be imprisoned in Auschwitz, and there he built an intelligence operation
precyzyjnie
in this camp and documented in detail the genocide that was being committed in this camp. Jan Karski, courier with the Polish government in exile, delivered this intelligence to the Allied governments of the United Kingdom and the United States of America.
Jego informacje były tak
And
wstrząsające,
yet,
że
the intelligence
nie dawano
that he
im
provided was so shocking that he was met with
wiary.
disbelief.
Przez- na
Today,
wszystkich ludziach,
it is
którzy
us, all the people of goodwill,
powinność, by
that are
kontynuować
responsible
misję
for continuing this mission of
prawdy o
telling the
Auschwitz.
truth about Auschwitz.
Ten obowiązek wobec całej
This
ludzkości
duty
wypełniają szczególnie Polacy.
Towards all humanity is fulfilled especially diligently by the Poles and the Jews. It is carried out by numerous institutions and milieus in Poland and the State of Israel, and they are led by the Polish Auschwitz-Birkenau Memorial and Yad Vashem Institute in Jerusalem. This institute,
10 dni temu
only
powiedział, że
10 days ago, was described by President Duda as one of the most important places on the map of the world.
pamięć o Holokauście,
The memory of
pamięć
Holocaust,
o Auschwitz
the memory of Auschwitz must be kept by the next generations.
trwać wiecznie,
It
aby
must
uchronić ludzkość przed
stay
powtórzeniem się
forever
tragedii
and that
zagłady.
will protect humanity from the tragedy of extermination of occurring again.
Zamordowanych w Auschwitz.
Let us honor the memory of those who were murdered in Auschwitz. Let us honor the memory of all those
Cześć pamięci
who
wszystkich
died here. Let us honor the memory of all the victims of the Holocaust.
O zabranie głosu proszę jej
Now,
ekscelencję
I'm
Annę
kindly
Azari,
asking Her Excellency
ambasador.
Anna Azari, the ambassador of Israel, to take the floor.
Szanowna Pani Premier, szanowni
Prime Minister,
drodzy ocaleli i
Dear
drodzy więźni
survivors,
Auschwitz,
Dear inmates of KL Auschwitz, ladies and gentlemen,
Spotykamy się tutaj
we are meeting here
72.
on
już
the
rocznicę wyzwolenia
72nd anniversary of the liberation of KL Auschwitz.
Ostatni świadkowie
Every year
tego
depart the last witnesses of this industrial murder that was happening right here.
Z upływem czasu
With
musimy
passing time, we must begin to consider how to keep the memory of the Second World War and the Holocaust.
Izraelski projekt wyjazdów
The
naszych
Israeli project that sees our students travel to Poland started as a way of giving those children
szansy usłyszenia
an opportunity to listen to the last survivors.
większość grup nie ma takiej
Today, most of those student groups have no such opportunity.
z dnia na dzień jest coraz mniej.
They cannot listen to the survivors because there are fewer and fewer of them.
Ambasady Izraela
One of the most important missions taken up by the Embassy of Israel are events that are organized regularly where we honor the righteous among nations.
tych niezwykłych bohaterów
Those extraordinary heroes
z narażaniem życia
who risked their lives and the lives of their loved ones to save the Jews, people sentenced to extermination.
prawie wszyscy medale
Unfortunately, in almost all cases now the medals are collected by their descendants.
ostatnim pokoleniem, które ma
We are the last generation that has a chance to hear of the Holocaust from those who personally experienced this cruelty.
Dlatego też musimy
And that is why
maksymalnej
we need to make
żeby odnaleźć i zachować
all this extra effort and do what we can to find and to preserve as many individual stories
tamtych strasznych
as we can, stories that are testimony to those terrible days.
powiedzenie.
In Judaism, there is this saying to the effect of, you do not need to complete the task you have been charged with, but neither are you allowed to avoid it.
Ten werset zapisał się w pamięci wszystkich.
I would like this verse to be embedded in the memory of all those who remember about the Holocaust, all those who are making so much effort to preserve the memory of this terrible thing for future generations. Thank you so very much.
O zabranie głosu proszę Jego Ekscelencję
May I now ask
Siergieja Andriejewa,
Excellency
ambasadora
Sergei Andreev,
Federacji
the
Rosyjskiej.
ambassador of the Russian Federation to Poland, to take the floor.
Уважаемая госпожа председатель Совета министров Республики Польша, уважаемые дамы,
Madam Prime Minister,
прежде всего хотел бы
Ladies
выразить
and gentlemen,
глубокое уважение бывшим
to
узникам
start with,
лагерей
I
смерти.
would like to pay my
Они
deep
выжили и
respect
донесли до
to
нас
the
память
former
о
inmates
преступлениях,
of the Nazi
повторения которых
extermination
нельзя
camps.
допустить
They
никогда.
have survived and brought us the
Нами
memory of
остается
the
всё
crimes that
меньше
must
таких
never be
людей,
allowed to be committed
равно как и
again.
тех, кто их
There are
освобождал из
less and
застенков,
less
и
survivors
каждая
among us,
встреча с
and there are
бывшими
less and less of those who freed the inmates from their tortures.
приобретает
That is why all the meetings with the former inmates and with the liberating soldiers are so valuable. It was 72 years ago when the Red Army liberated Auschwitz that the world found out about the most horrific symbol of the Holocaust.
другие народы, населявшие
Unfortunately, back then, the Jews, the Slavs and other nations living in the territories under the Nazi German occupation had already experienced to a certain extent the ominous practice of racial theories as applied by the Third Reich. During the Second World War, it was for the first time in history that the civilian casualties outnumbered the military victims, and this was the direct effect of the planned extermination of the entire nations. Military losses of the Soviet Union and Germany were more or less the same, but the number of Soviet civilian casualties was twice as high as those killed in action. The number of military and civilian casualties in Poland cannot really be compared, as half of these deaths resulted from the so-called final solution to the Jewish
Осенью
question.
прошлого года исполнилось 70 лет после
It
вынесения
has been 70 years since the International Military Tribunal at Nuremberg passed its judgment on the main Nazi war criminals, which basically applied to the entire theory and practice of the Nazis as its hostility to mankind.
приняла
On the 19th
резолюцию,
December, the UN General Assembly in New York passed a resolution on combating glorification of Nazism,
сражался против
emphasizing that it is inadmissible to treat as national heroes those who fought against the anti-Hitler coalition or collaborated with the Nazis. It is also shameful to engage in attempts to defile and destroy the monuments which were erected to commemorate those who fought Nazism during the Second World War. There are issues which allow no compromise. It is inadmissible to indulge Nazi supporters and their followers. We cannot divide terrorists into those who are good and those who are bad and try to use them to attain our own political goals. History punishes those who fail to do their homework. Today, as we express our sorrow, we will always remember those who were tortured to death in the Nazi death camps and who perished at the hand of pacifiers, criminals. We will always remember those who were starved to death and suffered under the occupation. Long live the memory and praise of the liberating soldiers who fought and won the Hitler plague. Let the madness of Auschwitz never repeat itself, and may we all live under a peaceful sky. Thank you very much.
Oddaję głos dyrektorowi
And
Piotrowi
now,
Cywińskiemu,
the floor will be taken by
opiekunowi
Director
miejsca
Piotr
pamięci
Cywiński, who is
Auschwitz-Birkenau.
the guardian of the Auschwitz Museum and Memorial.
Człowiek,
The
którego
man
niemieccy naziści
who the German
wsadzili w
Nazis imprisoned in the camp
obozie, miał zostać całkowicie
was to be suddenly and completely dehumanized,
odcięty od świata,
cut off from the world,
separowany od ludzi,
separated from people,
okradziony z nadziei,
deprived of hope,
wymazany z historii.
erased from history.
Miał znaleźć się poza
He was
kategoriami
supposed to be
przestrzeni,
beyond the categories of space and time,
gdyż i przestrzeń i
as
czas
both space and time, the basic coordinates of human existence,
tracą swą
they
moc
lose their
względem
power in relation to those who were meant to be just numbers.
czas w obrębie drutów
Time
inaczej.
within the confines of Bob Myers passed
Naprawdę
by
wiele to
otherwise.
doświadczenie
Many describe this experience in their memoirs.
czas obozowy to czas
The camp time
absurdalnego
is time of
pośpiechu
absurd haste and
i czas bezsensownego
senseless
oczekiwania,
awaiting,
czas głodu,
time of hunger and thirst,
zimna
cold
i
and
samotności.
loneliness,
Czas, w którym wszystko przyjmuje
time in which everything fades away continuously and everywhere, time
nieustannie zdaje
which
znajdować się o krok.
the end constantly seems to
Oto
be a
czas,
step
który
away.
traci nagle sens swojego istnienia.
This is time that suddenly loses its sense of existence, time for living in defiance of logic, and a time of close contact with death.
Dlatego obóz
That is why
doświadczenie tak skrajne i
the
tak
camp
ograniczone.
is such an extreme and critical experience. You have gone through
I
that
wróciliście do życia
and returned
w normalnej przestrzeni,
to live
w normalnym
in a
czasie.
normal space and ordinary times.
Trud tego powrotu
The difficulties of
chyba nigdy
that
nie będzie
return
zrozumiały dla
will
ludzi,
perhaps never be
którzy przez to nie przeszli.
comprehensible to those who have never
Jak
experienced it.
bowiem znowu przyzwyczaić
For how,
się do życia?
indeed, can one get used to
Jak
life again?
odbudować sobie nadzieję
How can
i
you
ufność?
rebuild in you hope
Jak
and
milczeć
trust?
i jak
How do you remain
odpowiadać?
silent and how
Jak zasnąć
do
i
you
spać spokojnie?
tell? How do you fall asleep and sleep soundly?
Tak prosto powiedzieć wyzwolenie,
So easy to say liberation, return.
Stoimy tu wraz z wami, drodzy,
We stand here together with
świadomi
you,
ciężaru,
dear ones, aware of the
jaki wasza
burden
nadzieja złożyła w
that
nasze
your hope
ręce.
has placed in our hands.
Nie miejcie nam za złe naszej słabej
Do not
wyobraźni.
blame
Nie
us
bierzcie za
for
nieudolność
our poor imagination,
naszych
and do
pytań.
not perceive our
Jesteśmy
questions and astonishment as a lack of competence. We very well
że
know
nasze serca
that our hearts and memories have been inscribed with what you told us,
napisaliście,
wrote,
nagraliście,
recorded,
ale i to wszystko,
everything
czego wysłowić nie
you were
daliście,
unable to express,
to zawsze już pozostanie
that
niewysłowione.
which will forever remain
Ale nawet jako
inexpressible.
takie, przecież to jest
But even as such, yet it is, in the gaze,
w ciszy,
in the air,
w powietrzu,
in
do
silent
powiedzenia. Wiemy to,
understatement. We know and we feel it.
stanowi to część tego
It is a
ciężaru.
part of this burden which
Być może jedyny
perhaps
różnic
the only meaning today lies in the fact
dzięki pamięci
that through memory,
nie rodzącej
awareness,
się w nich
and the
odpowiedzialności
engendering sense of
chroni
responsibility,
człowieka przed takim
it
potwornym
protects
systemem odczuwania.
man from such a horrendous system of dehumanization.
I nie jest prawdą, że
It is
historia
not true
lubi się
that
powtarzać.
history likes to repeat
byłoby
itself.
za łatwe,
It would be too easy,
zbyt modelowe.
too exemplary.
Ona, historia,
History,
niczym kameleon,
just like a
wyjątkowy
chameleon,
dar
has a unique
kamuflowania
gift for
zagrożeń.
disguising threats.
Nastaną więc inne czasy.
Therefore, there will come different
Przez nowe
times,
podmuchy populizmu,
shaped by new gusts of
inne hasła
populism
propagandowe,
different slogans of propaganda, various ideologies and attitudes of insensitivity. They already
Dziś nie
exist.
jesteśmy już
However,
nieświadomi.
today we are no longer unaware.
Dlatego dziś, w
Therefore,
tym dniu,
today, on this day,
chcę podziękować
I wish to thank you
za każde słowo,
for each word
świadectwa,
of your testimony,
za wszystkie głosy waszych
for
ostrzeżeń
all your warnings,
oraz
and for all that was inexpressible,
to wszystko, w którym rodzi się wiara,
which
w to, że damy
made
radę,
us
my powojenni,
believe that we could cope with it, we the post-war generation, to carry out into the future and share with subsequent generations the magnitude of your experience that were passed on to us. Thank you.
Szanowni Państwo, pracownicy muzeum i wolontariusze.